Last week, I gave you a recipe for low-carb lasagna using jicama, and that turned out great. That went over wonderful. But today's recipe is for low-carb lasagna with real lasagna noodles. Jicama lasagna is great and wonderful when you want an alternative to the lasagna texture and style. But if you are really craving that full, authentic taste and texture of real lasagna, this recipe is for you. And if you want a printable version of this, then check out my website at janetsdeliciouslowcarbkitchen.com. You can find a printable version of this recipe and other goodies there for you. Also, if you're new to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the little notification bell. That way you can be notified every time I put out a new video. And while you do that, let's get cooking. In a large mixer bowl, combine 2/3 cup almond flour, 2/3 cup vital wheat gluten, 5 tablespoons of oat flour or gluten-free flour of your choice, 5 tablespoons of tapioca starch or gluten-free starch of your choice, and 1 teaspoon salt. Whisk these all together until they're fully combined and no lumps are left in the flour. Add 2 large room temperature eggs, make sure they are room temperature, and 4 tablespoons of warm water. Make sure it is warm, not cold. Beat these all together on low for 1 minute or until no dry ingredients are left in the bowl. Change your paddle attachment out to a dough hook attachment on your standing mixer and beat on medium-high for 3 minutes. If you don't have a dough hook attachment, it's okay. You can just use a paddle attachment. It'll work just fine. Just beat it on medium-high for 3 minutes. Now, if you're wanting this to be gluten-free, then substitute that 2/3 cup of vital wheat gluten for 2/3 cup more almond flour plus 1 teaspoon of xanthan gum. Again, don't forget the xanthan gum. That is your binding agent. After you've beat that for 3 minutes, then scrape down the sides of the bowl if needed and push all the dough to the center if it's not already there. Then beat on medium-high for 3 more minutes or until the dough is nice and stretchy. And just a reminder, as I always tell you and always will, make sure your eggs and water and any other ingredients are all room temperature. It makes everything much easier to mix together when your ingredients are room temperature. And when it's easier to mix, it makes for a smoother batter, which makes for a smoother, more fluffy noodle. Also a reminder, if you are changing this to a gluten-free recipe, remember, when you change a gluten recipe to a gluten-free recipe, it does affect the texture of your noodles. So just a reminder, it'll still taste good and they'll still be great, but it will have a little bit different texture when you go gluten-free. So after you've beaten that for 3 more minutes and make sure the dough is nice and stretchy, cover the dough and let it rest for about 20 minutes on your countertop at room temperature. After it's rested, divide the dough into 6 equal pieces. Use a rolling pin or pasta roller and roll each individual piece out to 1/8 to 1/16 inch thick. Try to keep each piece in a rectangle or almost rectangular shape. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to keep it pretty close to a rectangle shape. Mine tend to come out more of like a stretched out oval, but as long as they're pretty close to a rectangle shape, you can trim them down with a pizza cutter if needed. Make sure your dough portions are rolled out to the length of whatever pan you're using. So if you're using the 3-quart casserole dish, 13 by 9 pan, then make sure your rectangle is long enough or pretty close to the whole length of your pan. If you're using a smaller pan, like if you're only needing an 8 by 8, then you obviously don't have to roll it out as long. So just make sure whatever size pan you're using, that your strips are the length of the pan that you're using. So after you've rolled out each portion, You can cook and use them right away if you want to. For me, I think the best result is to place them in the freezer for at least an hour. This just helps the dough really set good and you get a nice firm noodle when you're done cooking it. If you don't have time for that, like I said, you can just cook them, right away. But for the best result, I would say put them in the freezer for at least an hour and then cook them and use them. Either way, when you're ready to use them, fill a large stock pot about 2/3 up full of water. Add 1 tablespoon of salt and bring the salted water to a full boil over medium-high heat. Once it's come to a full boil, reduce the heat to medium and add the noodles one at a time to the boiling water. If you've had them in the freezer, you don't have to worry about thawing them out. Put them right in frozen. They cook up actually really good that way. Boil them for 7 to 8 minutes or until the noodles are tender but still firm. You don't want soggy noodles. And place them on a wire rack to cool while you make the sauce. If you want, you can actually make these noodles up to 24 hours ahead of time and just cool them completely and put them in a plastic container in your refrigerator for up to 24 hours. So once the noodles are cooked and you've got them on the rack to cool, we're going to make our sauce. For the sauce, in a medium mixing bowl, combine a 15-ounce can of tomato sauce, an 8-ounce can of tomato paste, 1 teaspoon onion powder, a half teaspoon dry basil, 1 teaspoon dry oregano, 1 teaspoon garlic powder. Whisk these all together until they're fully combined and the sauce is smooth. If you want, you can mix in a ½ pound of cooked ground meat or ground meat substitute. I usually do a ½ pound of ground turkey. It's up to you. If you don't want the meat, you don't have to put that in, but I like it. It gives it more bulk and more protein to your food. So it's up to you whether you want to add that meat or not. So after you've mixed it all together, make sure it's nice and smooth and set the sauce to the side. For the filling, in another medium mixing bowl, you're going to place 3/4 cup of cottage cheese. You can use ricotta cheese if you prefer it. I just like the taste of cottage cheese in mine. It gives it a real nice creamy flavor. It's up to you what you prefer there. A 1/4 cup of grated Parmesan, 1 large room temperature egg, and 1/8 cup of the sauce that you've just prepared. Preheat your oven to 375 degrees and lightly spray the bottom of a 3-quart casserole dish. Place 3 of the cooked and cooled noodles on the bottom of the 3-quart casserole dish. Spread the filling in a smooth, even layer on top of the noodles. Top the filling with half of the sauce mixture. Place the remaining 3 cooked and cooled noodles on top of the filling. And top with the remaining sauce mixture. Top the sauce with the desired amount of shredded mozzarella cheese. I usually use around 2 cups, but as I've said many times before, I like my cheese, so it all depends on how much cheese you like. Cover the pan and bake it for about 30 minutes. Uncover and bake about 5 minutes more just to get the cheese a little bit brown around the edges. Let it stand for at least 10 minutes before serving it. When it first comes out of the oven, it needs to let all the ingredients and all the flavors soak in good. Now you'll notice that this is just a single layer lasagna. If you want a traditional 2-layer lasagna, all you have to do is just double the recipe and layer an extra layer of noodles and fillings on top, then eat and enjoy. And that's our recipe of the day. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like and subscribe button. Leave me a comment if you'd like to. Let me know if there's any recipes that you'd like to learn how to make, and I'll do my best to get those out there for you. And, as always, keep cooking.